Welcome to the Phronesis Partners podcast, Navigate with Confidence. In each episode, we sit down with our clients and other thought leaders to discuss how they and their own customers use insights and data to illuminate, validate, and navigate their paths to growth and competitive success. We welcome you to join us as we uncover and explore the unknown so that business leaders like you can navigate your own opportunities and challenges with speed, accuracy, and confidence. I'm your host, Elaine Pratt, and today we're diving into a topic that's generating a lot of buzz, but also a lot of confusion, especially among marketers and market researchers: behavioral science. What is it really? How do you move from theory to action? And how can it help you better understand your customers and influence decision-making in ethical, effective ways? To help us unpack this, I'm joined today by Indrajeet Ghatge, Head of Behavioral Science at Phronesis Partners. Indrajeet brings more than 15 years of experience across sectors and leads a practice that helps clients translate cutting-edge behavioral science into real-world impact. Welcome to the show, Indrajeet.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It's an absolute pleasure to be invited to this podcast. And I'm really looking forward to it.
So Indrajeet, let's start with the basics. What exactly is behavioral science, and how is it different from, say, traditional market research or consumer psychology?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Elaine. So, behavioral science is the art and science of understanding human behavior, of predicting human behavior, and changing human behavior for the betterment of humans as long as their autonomy, freedom of choice, and dignity are preserved. Behavioral science is the science of understanding why people behave the way they do, why they buy certain things, why they subscribe or don't subscribe to products and services, what motivates them and what demotivates them, and so on and so forth. So it's a mixture of a lot of disciplines such as psychology, economics, neuroscience, sociology, and anthropology. And behavioral science is multidisciplinary. It's a multidisciplinary study of how humans make decisions and how they act, and it integrates a lot of the disciplines that I mentioned before. Market research, on the other hand, is more of a systematic gathering of data, followed by the analysis of that data, and it's mostly confined to markets, consumers, and competitors to inform business decisions. Um, Consumer psychology, on the other hand, is a study of uh, the mental processes, like the emotions or the motivations or the biases behind why consumers take certain decisions. And it is mostly studied at an individual level. So, behavioral science encompasses a wide range of disciplines to understand the why behind human actions, including cognitive biases, emotions, and social influences. And it's also more holistic in the way it is made up. So you can say that behavioral science informs both market research and consumer psychology, but it's not limited to commercial or consumer contexts only. It's a foundational discipline for understanding decision making in all areas of life.
So many of our listeners actually work in B2B.
Yes.
Why should behavioral science matter to them? Is it equally applicable to B2B psychology, or what kind of business questions can it help answer?
Well, regardless of whether a business is of a B2B or a B2C nature, more often than not, you have humans at the very core of all these businesses. And even in a B2B business, it's still about human decision making, because you still have humans at both ends who are kind of facilitating that business transaction, and therefore you have buyers and you have influencers and you have decision makers on both sides who drive the process. So behavioral science helps B2B businesses or organizations also to understand and influence those decisions more effectively. So behavioral science matters obviously in B2B as well, because there is complex decision making involved, and you kind of need to understand the nitty gritty of how those decisions are made and under what circumstances. Secondly, uh, B2B businesses are also, after all, run by humans. And human beings are the most intelligent animals on earth, but they're not always necessarily rational. And there is irrationality everywhere, and that kind of spills into different businesses and business decisions also. And therefore, it becomes imperative to study behavioral science. And then there are small changes that can create big results. So if you understand things from a behavioral science standpoint, and I'm talking in the context of B2B business, there is every reason to believe that you can always uh, bring about small changes to the environment in the B2B business context, which can lead to long lasting change.
So, behavioral science, it can sometimes actually feel a bit academic or abstract. Can you walk us through a real world example where it helped solve a business challenge?
Yes, I think uh, you're right when you say that behavioral science can sometimes feel academic or abstract. And I think when we use the word behavioral science or the term behavioral science, it conjures up an image of something that's kind of something that's done by academicians sitting in universities, or something that's confined to lab tests and things like that. But no, behavioral science, or you can call it behavioral business strategy or behavioral strategy, whatever term is more uh, useful and less intimidating. But of course, behavioral science it requires a process-driven approach. It's a very holistic science that borrows from different disciplines. So if you use it to the best of your abilities, you can actually uh, uh, influence different business decisions, and you can also get the best business outcomes. Um, but it is after all a process. You require a process-driven approach, and that's where the role of experts comes in. But our clients or companies in the B2B B2C space don't have to worry about whether behavioral science is complicated or not, because that's that's our job. The behavioral science experts, the behavioral science consultants will be able to kind of uh, filter it down in a way that our clients understand. And you have to leave all the difficult work to us. What you have to only see is how behavioral science actually helps you with your business outcomes. And speaking of examples of how behavioral science has been used in the B2B space. There is a B2B SaaS company in Norway, software as a service SaaS company, that offered a powerful platform for managing procurement. But the uptake, and it was meant for mid-sized businesses, but the uptake of their software was lagging, and their sales and marketing teams were very confident of the product's value because it was a good product, but potential clients were not moving past the demonstration stage. So they applied a behavioral lens to the problem, and they realized that well, the product is great, but the manner uh, in which they are communicating the value of that product is there's too much of like choice overload. So the platform was very customizable, but the demonstration overwhelmed the users because there were too many features and configurations in their product. And then a lot of the users also felt, we are already very happy with what we have. So they didn't really see a reason to switch to this product. And the value framing was also not very clear. So what they did was that they use behavioral interventions. So they first of all they tried to simplify the onboarding so that it becomes easier for clients to switch to this particular SaaS platform. Uh, they also had like some default settings, like recommended settings. So during onboarding, so users did not have to build their workflows from scratch. So this way they were able to counter decision fatigue. And they also used loss aversion framing to good advantage. So marketing messages, shifted to emphasize what prospects stood to lose by not switching. So, like, you will miss certain savings, or there will be more manual errors, or there will be certain compliance risks if you don't use our software and you continue using the software that you're currently using. And then they also use some social proof or verifiable data to show that other people in the same industry have started using our product, and this is how it is benefiting them. So they were able to demonstrate that others have also used our product and they are able to see discernible benefits. So if others are doing it, why shouldn't you? And then that led to an increase of almost 40% from demo to sign up. The conversion rate rose by 37% percent to be precise. The sales cycle shortened, and consumer onboarding satisfaction also improved significantly, which they were able to verify through some qualitative surveys that they did later on. And then, of course, if you think about it, closer home, also Microsoft Teams was initially rolled out as uh, like a like a software through which, or a chatting platform through which IT decision makers, mostly was confined to IT decision makers, but they wanted to broaden it to an audience of information workers, consultants, freelance employees, educators, and so on and so forth. And they tried to bring more empathy into the Microsoft Teams platform. So they tried to focus on themes like work-life balance and personal empowerment. So they took a cue from some other competitors in the space, like Zoom, for example, and then they were able to kind of, infuse empathy into their product line, and uh, as a result, Microsoft Teams also became more popular. So there are many examples of companies in the B2B space that have used behavioral science to good effect.
And I noticed that when I was preparing for this interview, I was reading some of the articles that you've written on the topic, and I noticed that you seem to talk about decision journeys instead of buyer journeys.
Hmm,
Is there
hmm.
is there a difference, or is that just semantics? And why does it matter?
Yeah, so when I think of a decision journey, Elaine, I I'm kind of forced to think of a typical linear way of making a decision to buy something. So, like, you have like that typical sales funnel. So where you become aware of a product, then you consider buying that product, then you make the decision, followed by the purchase, and then there is after sales support. And if you like the product, you continue being loyal to the product. So there's awareness, consideration, decision, purchase, after sales, and continued loyalty. But uh, that's a very that's a very classic marketing framework, and it assumes that people are very logical and deliberate in the way they think, and the journey of buying something is very linear, and more giving them more information at each stage leads to uh, their final decision to buy that product. But in reality, it doesn't. That's not how it is. So a decision journey, in my opinion, is more of, it's like a flow chart, which does take into consideration the emotions, the feelings, the sentiments at each stage of that decision making process when someone is going from the awareness stage to the purchase stage. I like to think of buyer journeys, or as I like to call them as uh, buyer behavioral journey maps, where at every stage we try to understand what kind of biases and heuristics the buyer is under the influence of, how it is affecting his or her decision to either go on to the next, advance to the next stage, or make a purchase decision. And we are also trying to understand, like, what are the barriers that are kind of dissuading or discouraging that buyer from going to the next stage towards the purchase decision, and what are the enablers, what is it that is actually helping him make that decision. So I always think that a buyer journey or a buyer behavioral journey map is actually more interesting, because it takes into consideration the feelings and the emotions at every stage. So uh, and as I said, like a typical decision journey is linear, but buyer journey, there are a lot of times there are multiple decision makers, and there are many offshoots to that map. Uh, uh, and i- there are also many different moments at every stage. So when they are at the decision stage, at a particular point in time, they might be influenced in one way based on what you're sharing with them. But maybe if you ask them the same thing day after tomorrow, they might be in a completely different frame of mind and they might think something else. So a decision journey wouldn't take that into consideration, whereas a buyer journey would actually take the context also into consideration.
So, so in your experience, what are some common misconceptions that businesses have about behavioral science?
That's a great question. And honestly, there are quite a few misconceptions. First of all, a lot of businesses still are not entirely sure what behavioral science really is or how it fits into their work.
Yeah.
Some see it as something that's really complicated, and we just discussed about how people think it's something very academic that's hard to apply. And
Hmm.
others go the opposite way and they treat it like a marketing trick or a gimmick, something that's flashy, that's supposed to get you quick results. Another big misconception is that behavioral science works like magic. So just tweak a message here and there, apply a nudge to a behavior, and suddenly everything changes for the good overnight. Uh, Another misconception is thinking that behavioral science is a quick fix or a panacea to all kinds of problems that you have. So it's like, just like some kind of a band-aid that you put on your wounds and do it and then just forget about it. And then finally, I'll say there's this idea that if something worked once, say in a particularly big campaign or case study, then it will automatically work everywhere else also, which it just isn't true. The truth is that behavioral science is very context driven, it's very nuanced, and it's about understanding how people really think, feel, and make decisions, and that takes time. It's very context driven. Behavioral science is all about the context. So, what works in one culture or one situation may not necessarily work in another. So, there's no cookie cutter solution in behavioral science. It's about thoughtful, tailored approaches that lead to lasting change.
And can you provide some examples of how behavioral science has been effectively applied in organizational settings?
Yes, of course, and I'll give examples from both the B2B and the B2C space. So behavioral science has been applied in various industries across various sectors, and in obviously in different organizational settings in different cultures. So in the field of finance, for example, SunTrust's on up program utilized behavioral science by guiding users through they had developed quizzes and personal stories, and the users were prompted to reflect on their financial habits. So, this approach incorporates the behavioral science principles of priming and commitment devices, thereby nudging individuals towards better financial behaviors. IKEA, the Swedish furniture manufacturer, simplified its website navigation by reducing categories and introducing natural groupings like rooms and ideas. So this redesign addresses choice overload, making decision making easier for the consumers and enhancing their shopping experience. So they don't really have to keep looking at hundreds of cupboards and hundreds of cabinets and hundreds of shoe racks. They can think of a room first, and whatever goes in that room, then it kind of filters down to that thing. In e-commerce also, like many major players, including I think Amazon, have used the concept of social proof to build trust and influence purchase decisions. That okay, like 70% people have purchased this in the last 1 hour, or five a few days or so.
And with me, can
Uh,
I pause you? We
yeah.
lost you for a minute. The
Mhm.
last thing I heard was you say, um, have have 70% of people have purchased this in the last 1 hour.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So what I was saying, Elaine, is like a lot of these e-commerce websites, they try to use social proof to good effect, so saying that 70% of users that have browsed the website in the last 1 hour have made a purchase, have purchased this particular product, or 500 or more people have purchased this product in the last 1 week. So in a way, it's like telling the consumers that others have done it, others like you have done it, so they see value in buying this product, you also should. It's a way of promoting sales. um, if I think about the energy and the utilities sector in the field of, uh, there was a there was a company in Germany that used the concept of defaults in behavioral science to automatically enroll citizens in a renewable energy plan for their homes. So, of course, the residents could opt out of it, but that process was purposely made hard for them to stay with the renewable energy plan that's good for the environment. In the insurance industry, some insurance companies have simplified the clauses or the terms and conditions of their policies to help customers understand their products better, and that has led to an uptick in purchase behavior. A lot of high-end fashion labels, because I know Phronesis works with a lot of high-end fashion labels. They focus on exclusivity to promote their products. So on the other hand, in the apparel industry, like some affordable youth fashion brands, they would highlight their imperfections to appeal to college going youngsters. So this is where the behavioral science concept called pratfall effect comes into the picture. And I have myself worked on a technology adoption initiative in a large organization spanning 30 countries. And I use the concept of rewards, recognition, and continuous feedback to drive that tech adoption. So yeah, there are many examples of successfully using behavioral science in the corporate world.
Yeah, that's super helpful, to understand how the science applies to both consumer and business focused companies. I understand, Phronesis has recently launched a behavioral science practice. Can I ask what led to this launch, or how you were how Phronesis is approaching this discipline differently from others?
Yeah, sure, Elaine. So Phronesis, of course, has done remarkable work in the last decade in the field of market research and competitive intelligence analysis. And of course, our affiliate, Fuld, has also been in the space for over 4 decades. But the behavioral science practice helps us understand the why behind consumer decisions, because market research typically, if you were to think about it at a very granular level, it's a collection of opinions of what people think about a particular product or a service offering. And you generally use surveys, or you do interviews, or you do focus group discussions to understand that. But a lot of times, market research misses out on why somebody is buying a particular product, or why somebody is not buying a particular product. And that's where behavioral science comes into the picture. Uh, at a high level, my main goal is to bridge the gap between what people say and what they actually do. Because in market research, the gap can be quite huge. Behavioral science helps us go beyond superficial or surface level responses and really understand the drivers behind human decision making. So, why people chose one particular brand over another, or why they resist change, or why they can be nudged towards a particular action. So, more specifically, I focus on bringing behavioral thinking into the core of how we approach client challenges. So, that means designing smarter research, interpreting data through a behavioral lens, helping clients apply these insights in ways that actually move the needle. Because whether it could be anything ranging from improving the customer experience, or shaping the communication, or designing better products and services. There's a lot of subjectivity. There are a lot of nuances, and as I said before, behavioral science is all about the context. So we need to understand that in depth, and behavioral science helps us capture all of that. So I'd really like to design and create processes that can capture that for our clients at Phronesis. And from uh, my previous experiences, I've seen that some clients use behavioral science as a reactive strategy when something goes wrong. But I'd like to help our clients think of behavioral science as a proactive strategy. Something that's embedded in their core decision making and processes. So that they don't have to think about it as a plug on or a bolt on. It's something that's very much ingrained in the way they think about their business. Another part of our role is internal. So we want to build awareness and capability across our teams. So behavioral science becomes second nature and not a bolt on, as I said earlier. And this is because ultimately it's not just about theory. You want to make real world impact, and that requires translating behavioral insights into actions that work in this very volatile, complicated, ambiguous world where clients of ours typically operate in. So we'd like to make Phronesis Partners a behaviorally informed organization, and we've been doing exceptional work in the market research and competitive intelligence space, as I said before. Now we'd like to equip everyone to see problems with a behavioral science lens so that we can help our uh, clients also to do the same.
So in addition to the advisory services that we will be offering to clients around behavioral science and applying it within their businesses, we also offer project management or even training
Yes.
services. Can you tell me more about how these um, services or offerings will work, or what kind of clients would engage with them?
Yeah. So before I go in, I'll just make a quick note about the behavioral science advisory that we have. So we understand that a lot of clients may actually use behavioral science as a reactive strategy. So maybe they are in the middle of something and they realize that, okay, now we are stuck somewhere and we've launched a fantastic product, but it's not becoming very popular with our intended audience. What should we do? And that's where, our behavioral science practice can come, where we can come in and we can try and understand what is it that is holding the clients back? Why is it that they are not buying your product? So that's the advisory, where we kind of do quick research and we try to find out what the problems are, what the biases are, why is it that what is actually holding the prospective customers back from buying your product. Uh, the second thing, of course, is the end-to-end behavioral science project management. And I said that, ideally, we would like our clients to think of behavioral science as something that's embedded with their business strategy. So, so rather than having a reactive approach, it's important that our clients have a proactive approach, and this is exactly what I alluded to. So, before they launch a new product, they might want to bring us on board. So, this is at the very nascent, at the very incipient stages, so that we can actually be their partners in the entire journey from the time that the product is conceptualized and from the time it is designed and it's developed and then deployed in the market. So we would ideally like to inform or help our clients understand the human aspects of the human behavioral aspects of their consumers, of their customers at every stage, so that they can avoid costly mistakes that might be very difficult to rectify later. If you take a behavioral science approach at the outset, chances are that you will always tread a very careful path and be able to get more success with all your product launches, or if you're trying to move into a new geography, or you're trying to uh, increase your market share. And as far as the training is concerned, we've already discussed this before, that there are a lot of misconceptions about behavioral science. A lot of people uh, make a guess about what it might be, but they have not been able to uh, actually understand what exactly behavioral science is, or how to leverage it for in order to kind of achieve certain business outcomes. So we can do anything from like a half day workshop for our clients, either at their location or through a webinar, or we can do like a 1 or 2 day deep dive or a preliminary behavioral diagnosis into understanding um, how to identify behaviors and then how to segregate them as behavioral problems or barriers to a particular behavior, barriers to a particular decision as a behavioral problem or some other, and then kind of go delve deeper into the behaviors and then trying to see where the biases are and how to get rid of those biases. uh, or and we can also present a lot of case studies of uh, examples of how behavioral science has been used in those particular contexts or those particular industries and what benefits it has given them. So we can train decision makers in behavioral science. We can train staff members in behavioral science. We can equip different level of employees in any organization with behavioral science so that they are able to ultimately help their business.
So where do you see behavioral science going in the next few years, especially as AI and automation continue to evolve?
So I think good organizations or successful organizations will start embedding behavioral science in their core strategy, and this is what I would really like organizations to do. So something that I mentioned before, that it's something that I would hope clients and organizations start doing in the future. It should ideally become the de facto way of running any business successfully. So rather than just applying behavioral science, say, to an advertising campaign or to nudge employees to submit maybe their timesheets before the due date and things like that, organizations will start thinking of behavioral science as an essential ingredient in their product strategy, in their communication roadmap, in their process blueprint, in the manner in which they design their employee experiences or their sustainability efforts, and so on and so forth. Another trend is that there is going to be a rise of behavioral data. So, with more digital touch points and richer data streams, there's growing opportunity to analyze real behaviors, not just self-reported behaviors, because self-reported actions or self-reported behaviors are very typical of traditional market research. And we want to use that to test and optimize interventions in real time. So that's going to be huge for companies that are trying to become more agile and evidence based in decision making in a business environment that's characterized by VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Uh, I also think that behavioral science will play a bigger role in organizational design. So, helping leaders understand team dynamics better, decision making biases better, how to shape a better workplace habits, especially when a lot of companies are going hybrid. Uh, so, it's not just about influencing customers anymore, it's also about designing smarter, happier organizations because a happy and smart organization will also lead to happy customers. Then, as you mentioned, there's also the push towards artificial intelligence, AI, in different aspects of our work as behavioral science experts. So that's going to be very useful, especially when it comes to problem identification, data collection, also data analysis. Um, Brainstorming, ideation, then also pilot design when you come up with a behavioral intervention or solution and you kind of want to design an experiment or a test to see how well it works. And lastly, I think there's a push towards ethics and responsibility. Um, so as behavioral science becomes more mainstream, there's going to be more awareness that with the power to influence comes the responsibility or the accountability to do it transparently and in a way that respects human agency. So there are ethical frameworks that are becoming key to how behavioral science is applied, especially in the private sector. And I think that will become the norm sooner or later.
Well, Indrajeet, this has been a fantastic conversation. I certainly have learned a lot about behavioral science and how, yeah, companies are using it to more effectively understand their and influence their customer behavior. Um, Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wish more marketers or researchers understood about behavioral science?
Yeah, sure, Elaine. So behavioral science is an absolute essential when you're thinking of helping clients understand what is the best way to uh, understand customers and what is the best way to design products and services that will cater to them. Behavioral science is not just about clever tricks uh, to get people to buy more. It's about understanding human nature, why people think the way they do, and to go in depth, understand people, your target customers, and then design products and services that would appeal to them. Secondly, context is everything. A lot of times, market research does not capture that, because typical surveys, they capture quantitative data that, okay, 70% people said this, and 20% people said this, and 10% people said something else. But why did the 70% people say what they said? And maybe different people within that 70% might have said what they said for different reasons, but have you been able to capture that? And sometimes market research doesn't capture that, especially if surveys are only of a quantitative nature. Um, so context is very important, and that is very important for market researchers to know. Gone are the days where you can simply create a survey, send it out on SurveyMonkey, get people to respond to it, and then make business decisions based on the results of the market survey. No, you have to understand the nuances. You have to understand uh, 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 the science behind human emotions if you want to design good products and services for human beings. The other thing is, in a market research, typically in a survey, people might say they will do something, but they might actually not do it. So there's always this intention action gap. Um, they may tell you that they have done something, but in reality, they might not have done it. So there's always this social desirability bias that they want to be seen as someone who did something because that seems to be the right thing to do. But in reality, they might not actually do that. They might do the complete opposite. So market research, unfortunately, doesn't capture that element, whereas behavioral science would. And small frictions have big consequences, so a lot of valuable behavior never happens, not because of a lack of motivation, because people think, oh, people will only do something if they are motivated, and if they won't do something if they're not motivated. But no, it is also because of some tiny, often invisible frictions, like the form that you're trying to fill is very confusing, or there might be a very long email with no clear call to action, or there might be a price tag that's not anchored or framed well. So behavioral science helps you spot and remove those barriers, and that often leads to dramatic results without major changes to the product. And then finally, ethics matter a lot. So whether you're in the field of market research or behavioral science or whatever it is, just because we can influence decisions doesn't mean that we always should. So we have to give enough importance to uh, dignity, freedom of choice, and autonomy of the people for whom we are designing products and services. I'll stop there.
Well, thanks, Indrajit, for sharing your expertise and helping our listeners today connect the dots between behavioral theory and business results. Uh, for our listeners, if you're a marketer or researcher looking to deepen your understanding of how people really think, decide, and act, this is definitely a space you will want to keep watching. And to learn more about how Phronesis could help your team embed behavioral science into your research or strategy, you can check out our website at phronesis-partners.com, where we have a full description of our behavioral science practice and the services we offer to help businesses like you. So, thanks again for joining us on Navigate with Confidence. And until next time,
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Elaine.
thanks, Indrajeet. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind the scenes content. Stay tuned for more episodes where we will continue to explore and navigate the complex world of B2B sales and more to provide you with the insights you need to navigate your business decisions with confidence.